It's another episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast presented by Whelen Engineering. On the road, in the air, and around the world, Whelen is trusted to be seen, trusted to be heard, and trusted to perform. Welcome in to the Concord, North Carolina MRN studios. I'm MRN pit reporter Chris Wilner, MRN announcer Kyle Rickey out at Stafford or back in Connecticut, somewhere, wherever you are in New England. And we were supposed to be talking about this amazing Napa Spring Sizzle again, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. So we're going to have to wait a couple weeks, K-Rick.
Yeah, Mother Nature did what Mother Nature traditionally seemingly does here in Connecticut, and that is rain on the Spring Sizzler Parade. It was the 51st Spring Drizzler. But that's all right. We'll be back next week. I know the Modified Tour is in action this weekend. We'll talk more about that. So the management at Stafford Motor Speedway have moved the event to Friday and Saturday, May 12th and 13th. So we'll kick things off a week from this Friday. That's all right. We'll just extend the anticipation just a little bit longer.
A lot of racetracks are having to do that. I mean, I don't know if you believe in some sort of superstition. My wife was telling me you could stick knives in the dirt, and that's supposed to be some thing to, ward off the rain gods or something. But I think everyone across the country has had to deal with rain delays, postponements, cancellations at some point. And we're sitting here, as we record this, May 3rd. So we got to get this thing figured out, Mother Nature. I mean, I don't know who made you mad, but we need to figure this out because we got a lot of great racing. I know High Limit was postponed at Kokomo. I was supposed to be on that call. Lots of other racetracks having to deal with that. But we did have some great racing. Of course, over the weekend, we'll get to that here in just a little bit. Coming up, though, on the show, we will have Toni Breidinger, who had an impressive 7th place run and probably could have been better if it wasn't for a little bit of an issue. She's also making her Truck Series debut at Kansas this weekend. So we're going to talk to her and recap everything about Dover. We talked about Mother Nature, but we also have some big races coming up. Kyle mentioned the Modified Tour back in action at Monadnock, and also the the ASA Stars National Tour Super Late Models. They're going to be back in action. The big Joe Shear Classic at Madison. So lots still coming up ahead, plus big races this weekend. So Kyle, let's dive into ARCA at Dover over the weekend. You could have heard that call on FS1 and PRN. But Kyle, it was not the car count I think I was expecting for the E-Series, but boy, it was a good down-to-the-wire finish and a young star in the making in Jake Finch.
Yeah, there were about 6 cars at the end of that race, or most of the event, that really mixed it up for the lead. Toni Breidinger being one of them. But yeah, Jake Finch able to pick up his first career win. A green-white checkered finish over Landon Lewis. They were side by side for most of those closing laps. It might have been actually a few more laps than a green-white checkered, but caution came out late in the race when Connor Jones, who I think was 3rd at the time, he popped a tire going into turn 3, and it looked like a Dover hit from like the 90s. Remember those old races, those old cup races where, tires would pop and they would slam that concrete. Thankfully, he got the safer wall. You could literally see about 100 yards of that safer barrier wave and the movement. So, obviously that it did its job. Connor was okay. By far the biggest hit of the weekend. Glad he's okay. But yeah, fantastic race. You mentioned a lighter car count than what we are used to seeing at Dover, but the ones that were out there, the drivers that were out there, put on a fantastic show for the entire 125 lap distance. Feel for Toni Breidinger, though, and we'll talk to her in a little bit. She was up to 3rd at one point after missing that final incident with Connor Jones, and I think might have had a shot at least a podium finish because she was working her way up through the field in the closing laps before, I believe, a fuel line issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Luke Fenhouse and William Sawalich, LeVar Scott, your top 5. We've had LeVar on the show as well. He's progressing nicely in that Rev Race Chevrolet. So good to see some names up toward the front. Of course, William Sawalich, we talk about him all the time, but again, super impressive in his maiden ARCA season. Coming up next, though, for ARCA, we are going to talk about it with Toni. Is going to be Kansas this weekend, the first 1.5 miles, kind of the intermediate track for the ARCA Menard Series. Always produces great racing, and we will have a new winner as our last year's champion has moved on to the Truck Series. Non-rained out events this weekend. There were a few to talk about. Jennerstown had its opening night. Several leaders getting involved in a crash with 25 laps to go. Owen Hupt wins the season opener out there. Doug Glessner won the modified race. And then how about at Hickory? Landon Huffman, we talked about him last year winning the championship, joining his dad as a track champion at Hickory. Finally gets that elusive win this year. He talk about bad luck. I mean, that guy has been through the ringer this year, but he's got one in the bank so far, number 1 this year.
Yeah, he got his first win finally after some tough luck in the couple of opening weeks of the season. This past week, Twin 25s, I believe there was a big incident in race number one as well. All the big wrecks seem to happen in race number one for whatever reason. But yeah, they went in turn one and piled them in. Kay Brown survived both of the features and went on to win race number two. So some competitive racing at Hickory Motor Speedway. Also live on Flow. I tell you what, I had like 4 streams going at once at
I know.
one point Saturday night. I had Jennerstown. That's where they were climbing the backstretch wall. I think a camera got taken out, a robotic camera in turn three. During that big wreck that you mentioned, Bowman Gray was on. We'll talk more about Bowman Gray in a minute. Hickory was going on. The ARCA race that was postponed from Friday to Saturday. Yeah, so it was while it was raining here in Connecticut. I certainly had my fill of short track racing across the country, thanks to Flow Racing.
Yeah, absolutely. That flow racing a godsend when it comes to filling our need for speed throughout each and every weekend. So we talked about Hickory. Other winners over the weekend, just to kind of give a mention, Chris Fleming and Lee Jeffries won at Bowman Gray. Kyle, so far, I think for the first 2 weeks of the Madhouse has been a lot, I guess, better of a start from the driver's perspective. Haven't heard a lot of complaints. Remember, they did repave for a second straight year. So far, so good, I would say.
Yeah, brand new pavement for a second year, as you mentioned. A lot of folks not happy with the pavement job from a year ago. So new pavement this year. We've had a couple of those double file shootout cone races, whatever you want to call them, the restarts, and everyone seems to be a lot happier this year than having to restart on the outside on the pavement that was put down a year ago. We see some great races, great crowds. Not too much tore up equipment, although we've had our fair share of incidents, multi-car incidents in the opening couple of weeks. Nothing too severe, and a bunch of different winners.
Yeah, yeah, so far so good. So Bowman Gray is off and running as well. Congrats to Chris and Lee. By the way, I did want to mention Landon Huffman not only winning at Hickory, he did land a Cars Tour late model stock ride for the rest of the year. Nelson Motorsports, he made that announcement on Twitter yesterday. Big upgrade for Landon. So going to do double duty running for the points championship at Hickory. And of course, trying to do what he can do in the Cars late model stock tour. So good job to him. Dylan Zamper won at All American. Peyton Sellers, we haven't talked much about him so far this year, won up out at Dominion, some of our weekly NASCAR track winners over this past weekend. And I did want to mention before we get to Tony, Kyle, how special was this weekend for Ryan and Martin Truex. First time that brothers have won in 2 different series on the same weekend for the same organization, JGR. Ryan dominated, stunk up the show in the Xfinity race. And then, of course, on Monday, rain delay, Martin Truex won the race, snapped a 54 race winless streak in the Cup Series. So, I mean, that's got to be cool. And I know you've covered both of them for quite some time. Can't imagine the emotions were really up there.
Yeah, we were around, I think, doing the show when Ryan was winning his championships on the K&N Pro Series East back in what 2010, 2009,
Yeah.
yeah, 09 and 010. So I remember doing the end of the year events with him at like some of the indoor go-kart places down in Charlotte. I think it even preempts GoPro Motorplex, or now Trackhouse Motorplex, down in Mooresville. So yeah, I've known Ryan for a long time. I've seen the struggles that he has gone through with some of the smaller teams in both the NASCAR Xfinity Series and in the NASCAR Cup Series. And it's nice to see drivers that have come through and have persevered through the difficult times, like an Alex Bowman. We talk about Alex all the time. He's like, I got to make a lot of mistakes when I was young, driving for smaller teams in the back of the field, and it's helped and paid off when he gets to Hendrick Motorsports. And now we're seeing, I think, Ryan have that same type of success at Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series. He would be so fun to cover in running for a championship. I wish he had a full-time ride. And what about that hair?
Yeah.
Took me a
For
second.
some, they would think the hair may slow him down a couple tenths, but not for Ryan. That is absolutely what they call the kids call it now, lettuce or flow, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. I mean, it was pretty glorious when he took his helmet off. So really cool for Ryan, like Kyle mentioned. And it was cool for Justin Allgaier too after the race to say, normally race car drivers aren't happy when someone
Right.
else wins, but everyone in the Xfinity garage was smiling when Ryan Truex won. So kind of tells you about how they feel about their fellow competitor, I should say. All right, enough of us blabbering. We got Toni Breidinger on the line. She's got a big weekend coming up ahead. Tricon Garage debut in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series at Kansas. We'll also talk all things ARCA at Dover. Toni Breidinger coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back into NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Whelen Engineering. As promised, Toni Breidinger joining us, the Venturini Motorsports driver, career best 7th out at Dover in the ARCA E-Series last weekend. Toni, congratulations on that run, but we are hot and heavy looking forward to Kansas. But how would you summarize your afternoon out at there at Dover in the ARCA E-Series?
Yeah, Dover was really fun. We didn't get any practice or qualifying, so I wasn't really sure exactly what to expect. I did like a bunch of notes and everything, but I feel like once you get on the track, it's a totally different feel. But I had so much fun. It's actually one of my favorite tracks now. It was a really great run. We had a fuel line problem at the end there, but still, like, I was overall super happy with what we did there.
So it's 7th on paper, but you mentioned the fuel line problem. You were, I think at one point you went from 6th to 5th to 4th, and then you had just got into 3rd when that last incident happened late in the race. What goes through your mind when the car just breaks at that
Yeah.
point? You're having a banner day.
Yeah, it was going really great until then, and I kind of smelt like some fuel and kind of let the guys know, and I was like, I'm just gonna finish it out no matter what. I mean, obviously, if something is totally off in the gauges, I was gonna say something, but yeah, until like that green white checker, and my fuel pressure just dropped to 0, like started dropping really fast, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is it for us. And it was a huge bummer. I mean, I think that was the best run that I've had with my crew chief Caden and our team. So I feel like every race we've gotten better and better. So it was kind of like a bummer that we couldn't really show how well we did.
You know, last year you ran the full season. Obviously, you're off to a great start this year. Been super competitive at Phoenix until getting caught up in an incident. We talked about Talladega looked really strong, and then obviously with Dover in the E-Series. How would you evaluate the start to your 2023 ARCA season? It seems like you picked up a lot from last year running full time.
Yeah, I feel like I don't have as much of a learning curve going into all the tracks this year. So I feel like I'm kind of going in with more confidence in myself and the car and just the fact that I know these tracks. But yeah, it's a bummer. I feel like we ran, pretty strong at all these races, but on paper we've had like some bad luck, so it doesn't really show. But I know like once all the pieces come together, we'll have a really strong finish to finally show for it.
To go back to Dover for a moment, you mentioned no practice, no qualifying. We're going right into the race for 125 laps. How tough is that as a driver to go out there? Your first hot lap of the weekend is in the race.
Yeah, it's very difficult, but I honestly kind of feel like it's a blessing but a curse, because I know on the truck stuff this weekend I won't have a lot of practice. So I kind of feel like it almost helped me give me that confidence, like, hey, you like don't need a bunch of practice to like just get up to speed. You can like adapt really fast. I feel like adapting is something that I've struggled with in the past. So I feel like that kind of helps prove to myself like, hey, like you can do it and adapt really fast. So I think it was kind of a blessing but a curse for me.
Well, let's talk about that. That's the big news coming into this week at Kansas. Double duty, obviously, with the ARCA Menard Series, but making your Craftsman Truck Series debut at Tricon Garage in the Victoria's Secret Toyota. Now that we're here for race week, where are the nerves at? I mean, I know you've been looking forward to this for quite some time.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. I honestly kind of expected to be a little bit more nervous than what I am. I feel like, I don't know, but just like doesn't feel real yet. I think once I'm like at the track and I see my truck and everything like that, I think I'll feel a little bit different. But yeah, I feel like I'm almost trying to play it down a little bit. I mean, it's just another race. Obviously it's my debut and it's a huge moment for me, but I think I'm like kind of trying to play it down a little bit so I don't kind of psych myself out.
Well, I'm assuming running the ARCA race will help.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we have that ARCA test on Friday, and then we have the race and practice and everything. So I think that'll kind of help me go through all the motions, and I think I'll have plenty enough laps to kind of get a good feel for the track, and then I'll just have to adapt to the truck.
How special is it, though, to partner with Victoria's Secret? I know I read some articles about how, you were a part of that company, and obviously it's a female-driven company that's making their really breakthrough in the sport. So, I mean, and now you get to represent them. So, I mean, that's got to be special for you.
Yeah, it's very special, and it's really amazing to work with a brand who really champions women, and they want to do really meaningful partnerships like this. I feel like it's just a huge moment for me in my career, and to partner with a brand like Victoria's Secret, who I've always dreamed of working with. It's been really, really special for me. It's probably like the most surreal moment for me.
How do you prep for a weekend like this? I mean, obviously you have plenty of laps in the ARCA car, but have you been in the sim? Who have you talked to? Obviously you have a lot of resources there at Tricon Garage.
Yeah, so I've done a sim session, which is really helpful in the TRD sim. I did some pit stop practice, which was helpful as well, since I haven't done a live pit stop before. So that's going to be a learning curve in itself. But I've just been trying to ask as many questions. I feel like I've leaned on Corey Heim a lot. I mean, he just won at Martinsville, and he was my teammate at bench training. So I feel like I kind of always just bug him with a bunch of questions. And he's been really great with answering all of them. So yeah, just trying to soak everything up and really just kind of see what the difference is between the truck and the ARCA car, so I can kind of not really have anything unexpected happen.
What are the expectations at Kansas, though? I mean, you talk about trying to downplay it. It is just another race. Obviously, you're going to have the ARCA race to feed off of that. But I mean, what is a good day for you when the truck race is complete?
Yeah, I would say a good day for me is running all the laps, getting the full experience in. And I don't really have expectations results wise. I just kind of want to see where I end up. I mean, I have goals for myself, have a good pit stop, have good restarts and put myself in a good position, and overall just be competitive. But I don't really have results in or expectations in a result sense. I have kind of mini goals for myself that I think will overall put together a really good day.
What are the hopes beyond Kansas? I mean, is this right now, obviously Kansas is the only thing that's been announced, but are you hoping there's other logs in the fire here that we may see you more in NASCAR's National Series along with ARCA?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, my focus after this race is, maybe to do another truck race, and then to kind of finish out the ARCA season pretty strong. So yeah, I'm trying to be present in all the moments, and kind of all focus is on Kansas. But once Kansas is done, I'll definitely be trying to gear up for something else.
If you look back, I mean, we talked about, your career through motorsports, 19 career USAC wins. You go from open wheel and just a few short years on the stock car side. You're now making your truck debut. Would you have imagined that you'd be here at this point, maybe a couple years ago?
No, I think it's pretty crazy. I mean, I feel like when I was little, I had this grand plan of how my racing career would go, and I'm really off track to how that plan was. I mean, I planned to do my truck debut forever ago when I was super young, but yeah, I mean, a couple years ago, I was making my ARCA debut, and I definitely feel like I knew I'd get here at some point. But yeah, definitely when I signed the deal this year, I was it's pretty crazy to actually be doing it.
Final question for you. When you talk about that grand plan from years ago, when you look at the current track that you're on now, you happy with it? I mean, I know it's not, what you had envisioned, say, a decade ago, but you seem to be on a pretty good path.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy with it. I think it's easy to compare your path with others and be like, oh, well, this driver is this year's old and they're doing this. And I feel like it's really easy to compare yourself with other drivers in the sport. But I think as long as you're progressing and moving forward, you're in a good spot. So I feel like that's what I'm doing.
My final question for you is looking ahead on the schedule, on your schedule for 2023. Are there certain tracks you have circled that maybe last year either one didn't go so well, or you figured out something? So, okay, when we go back, I know what to do now. What are some of the tracks you have circled on your schedule?
Yeah, honestly, Kansas is kind of my rebound track. I feel like I struggled there a lot earlier in the ARCA season, and when we went back the second time, I kind of picked it up a bit and had a better understanding of everything. So I kind of want to rebound there this year and really show okay, I've made this improvement. So yeah, I would say Kansas is kind of my rebound track for that.
Sounds good. Well, we look forward to watching your truck debut and, of course, your ARCA Menard Series venture out at Kansas. Best of luck, and we'll hope to catch up with you down the road.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Toni Breidinger making her Craftsman Truck Series debut at Kansas Speedway, as well as obviously running the ARCA Menard Series race for Venturini Motorsports. We're coming back after the break. More NASCAR Coast to Coast presented by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Wheeling Engineering. Hey, race fans, I got a question for you. If you're going to the historic North Wilkesboro race coming up here in a couple of weeks, racing electronics scanner rentals have to be purchased in advance online at racingelectronics.com. And your last day to rent those scanners for the All-Star race is May 19th. No walk-ups will be allowed at the racetrack. With the Racing Electronics scanner rental, hear uncensored communication from every race team in the race, or tune in to the MRN broadcast. Get yours May 8th, and you can save 20% off your North Wilkesboro rental. Head over to racingelectronics.com to secure your scanner rental today. And as a scanner user each and every weekend down on pit road with MRN, it's unrivaled access to the drivers. Really cool stuff. I know, Kyle, you can attest to that.
I feel like the pit reporters, especially that work the Motor Racing Network broadcasts, and obviously the reporters on television, they'd be lost without those scanners and being able to tune into whatever team that they need to tune into at whatever time to hear what's going on. Even if the teams are talking in code a lot of the time, you can hear something and then go over to the pit box and talk to the PR rep and go like, all right, so what did all that mean? But at least you heard it.
I think I had one at Talladega. It was mashed potatoes. I want to know if that was 4 tires or 2 tires, but the folks at home love trying to decipher what the cues are, but for sure. So don't forget, May 8th, you get 20% off your Racing Electronics rental for North Wilkesboro. All right, Kyle, we talked about the top of the show. You had a little bit of an abrupt ending to the weekend, looking forward to the Spring Sizzler, now put off until May 12th and the 13th. How does that impact the race itself, or does it? Are there any teams that maybe can't make it? Have you heard any rumblings of that, or is this basically just everything's good, we're on hold, and it's just going to refire up on Friday the 12th?
Yeah, I think we've heard, and I forget who now, one modified team can't make it because I believe there's an ROC modified race, the New York Tour, that Saturday night. I'm not quite sure where it is, but they usually run like Lancaster Speedway in upstate New York. So we may lose a team or two because of that, but for the most part, I believe all the big guns are there, and we'll be back. All the tours that compete here in New England on a full-time basis will be off next week. So it'll be interesting to see how the Friday night dual qualifying races work under the lights, setting most of the starting lineup for the Saturday 80 lap or 100 lap Spring Sizzler. So going to be a big weekend. All the weekly divisions are in action. The ACT late models, I believe there's 40 cars entered. And from what I've heard, all 40 are expected to be back next weekend if they can survive their race this coming Sunday at Thunder Road. So we'll see. It's going to be a good weekend regardless.
Sounds like a plan. And then I got my hopes up too, Kyle, because I was like, well, they were scheduled it, so maybe I can go. I'm in Laguna Seca for him. So
well, come north instead of west.
Man, I don't know. It's hard to pass up Cali weather in May, but we'll see.
True,
moving on to speaking of rain delayed races, I mentioned the High Limit Sprint Car Series rained out at Kokomo. They're going to reschedule that one at a date TBD, but it did bring to mind, Kyle, when we recorded this show last week. It was immediately after 34 Raceway when Alex Bowman, NASCAR Cup Series competitor, broke a vertebrae in his back in an accident and is going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks. That kind of sparked that debate that we've had, and it rears its head every time we have this. I mean, we talked about with Chase Elliott. What do you do if you're a team owner now in the NASCAR National Series and you've got guys out here now two from the same organization getting hurt in extracurricular activities? We know Kyle Larson, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. said they're going to still race. We know Joe Gibbs Racing has a deal where Christopher Bell doesn't run the sprint car. What's your take? Do you still try to race out of outside of your day job, or what's the risk there?
You go from the racetrack to home, and that's it, and the shop. No, I
like my mother.
Yeah, things happen. I don't think you should limit, and it could be a slippery slope if owners say, yeah, you can do trucks, you can do Xfinity, you can do the Snowball Derby, you can do SRX, because we're seeing some crossover there this summer, but you can't do sprint cars, or you can't do midgets, or you can't do modifieds, or whatever. When you get to picking and choosing, I think that's where the fans will really come alive. I think. I don't know what the answer is. I think every team owner probably has a different solution, and I encourage, because we see what those guys bring to the table when they show up at, say, a Kokomo Speedway, which was supposed to be tonight, or out at a short track in Iowa last week. You had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. out there, Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, some of the biggest names in the sport racing with some of the best sprint car drivers in the country. Great crowds come out and great viewership on a Tuesday night or whatever night of the week. I don't think you should limit it, but I'm also not the sponsor putting the money into the race team, and I'm not the team owner paying those drivers. So I think every situation is different, but I love it when they're out there, no matter whether it be in a late model or in a micro sprint at Millbridge or in an SRX car at Stafford. I encourage it because it only builds that interest in motorsports and in NASCAR. Kind of what is it? It rises all ships, full tide, or whatever that phrase is.
Yeah, I got you. No, absolutely, and I'm in the same boat. I think I see the benefits outweigh the risks, but again, it all falls on a specific team, and I don't think it's ever going to be something NASCAR or an organization or a governing body is going to make a decision on. But it's going to be a team by team basis. What are you willing to put up? And I think the benefits, though, for especially talking to Kyle, what those races get him when he goes and gets in the Cup car, I think outweighs the risk. So we'll see. But again, difficult situation. But I love seeing our NASCAR guys go out to the short tracks. I mean, heck, I talked to Ty Majeski earlier this week. He's running the Joe Shear Classic coming up in the late model. Now, again, a super late model, a little bit different than a wing sprint car with the power to weight ratio and all that. But at the same time, it's seat time. So the debate will rage on in this topic, I'm sure, for many, many weeks to come. All right, Kyle, let's get into our final news and note. And I had to make a note of this because we're trying to keep track. We're down to 10 left on NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers. We added a few between our last show. Bobby Labonte, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Obviously, we know Bobby, a 2020 Hall of Fame inductee, 2000 Cup Series champion. Jr., of course, a 26-time winner, 2 Daytona 500s, 6 at Talladega, and a 2-time NASCAR Xfinity champ. And then Keselowski and Truex, two Cup Series champions as well. Is there anyone that maybe should be nervous that's not on the list yet? We're down to 10.
Yeah, we are. And there's a couple of big names that I haven't heard yet. I was wondering when the Dale Jr. announcement was coming. It's only a matter of time. I'm glad for Martin Truex Jr. Big week for him. Obviously, the big week for the family at Dover Motor Speedway, and now this announcement. Have they announced Jimmy yet? I don't know if they've announced Jimmy Johnson yet.
Jimmy. The other one in my head was Joey Logano, and I asked him specifically for MRN content at Talladega. I said, what would it mean to you? Obviously, you haven't been called yet. And he's like, I haven't thought about it, but now, like, seeing at the time it was Denny and Kyle getting calls. I mean, how do you go against a 2-time Cup Series champion? So I wonder if Joey's going to be this next wave coming up.
And are there a few more short trackers out there that we might see, like a national champion, like a Larry Phillips, or a Busch North, or a Busch Series titleist years ago, like a Sam Ard or somebody like that, potentially get in? We'll see, because it's not just Cup drivers, right? It's the entire sport. Granted, a lot of the focus is on the NASCAR Cup Series, but there's more to this sport than just the NASCAR Cup Series, and hopefully we'll hear from some of those drivers and possibly being a part of this list as well before we get to Darlington here in just over a week.
That's right. So we're down to 10 in NASCAR 75 greatest drivers list. Okay, Kyle, before we cap the show, we've got some races coming up this weekend. You mentioned it at the top of the show. After what seemed like a 3-month break, the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour back in action to the Bullring at Monadnock Speedway, the Duel at the Dog, 5 p.m. Eastern Saturday. You can watch it on Flow Racing. Obviously, we talk about, Matt Hirschman and some of the big familiar names. Justin Bonson, you're a 4-time winner there and defending winner there. But is there anybody that can maybe upset? Obviously, we talked about Austin Beers picking up the win at Richmond. Who else do you have your eye on?
I like Matt Kimball, only because he knows Monadnock Speedway well. He has run so many years there and has had so much success in the sportsman modified division that that track runs there on a regular basis. He's entered for Saturday night's race. I like Matt Matt Kimball and Matt Hirschman. Obviously a couple of the big names there. Ron Silk is consistently strong wherever he goes. Hard to ignore Doug Kobe, Justin Bonsignor, some of those obvious choices. Last year's champion John McKennedy. Going to be a great race. It's going to be a quick race. They get around there in a hurry. A high bank quarter-mile oval at the Monadnock Speedway does not take long. I believe a couple of years ago the race went caution-free. Took 31 minutes, I believe, to complete. It was over in the blink of an eye. So going to be a good race this week. You can watch it on Flow Racing come Saturday evening.
That's right. And you know what's pretty cool too? This is the first race of a 3-race stretch for the Granite State Short Track Cup, where they're going to award bonuses, extra 15,000 total in bonuses at the short tracks, which include Monadnock, Lee, and Claremont coming up. So a championship within the championship. You be a little more aggressive, maybe, Kyle, to go for that extra cash money.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why Matt Hirschman's there. And he said last year that he wanted to support Josh Veneta, JDV Productions, who produces those 3 events and includes that bonus money under his promotion company. And Matt wanted to support Josh. Matt also wanted to take the check, and I think he did. More times than not. They call him big. They don't call him Big Money Matt for no reason. So it's like a race within a race. All 3 of those events will be held at short tracks in New Hampshire, and first one is this weekend. And congratulations to Josh once again on being a part of what he's been able to put together here these last couple of years.
Absolutely. And the other big race coming up this weekend, of course, we've got plenty of local racing all across the country, is that ASA Stars National Tour. Race number 2 of the year. Again, they've had a little bit of a while off on the national schedule. Again, that's about 10 races, and they're going to hit around each region of the country. This one, the Joe Shear Classic, the 16th running of that special event honoring the famous Midwest super late model star Joe Shear. Madison International Speedway in Wisconsin. I mentioned it, Ty Majeski is going to go right from the Truck Series race out at Kansas to run that race on Sunday. 40 entries, Kyle, and we mentioned Ty may be a favorite, being a winner of that race in 2016. There's some local stars mixed in with your usuals, Bubba Pollard, Stephen Nasse, and the like.
Yes, you mentioned Casey Roderick, also part of the entry list. He won at the Five Flag Speedway back to begin the season a couple of races ago. So again, it's going to be interesting to see the response. We talked about it at the beginning of the year with each region of the country hosting a national event, and this being a region, I think, in the Midwest that is very healthy when it comes to short track super late model racing, and that's why we have a great field of cars, and I assume the fan support will be there as well. Hopefully Mother Nature shines on them as well.
Yeah, we could use it for sure on the short track level. 13 states being represented too, so a good, nice national bunch, including actually a Canadian province represented in there as well. So that race on Sunday out at Madison International. Of course, I mentioned tons of weekly racing going on. Cars Tour back in action at Ace Speedway, North Carolina. Eldora, if you like dirt racing, the USAC Let's Race 2. Boy, USAC has been hit real hard.
Yes,
they have yet to start their really big regular season. Yeah, they raced in Florida back in February, but they haven't been in action since, with rainouts, all across the board so far to start their year. So hopefully Eldora is the place to be with the Let's Race 2. And then, of course, NASCAR weekly action at Berlin, Jennerstown, Langley, Meridian. Pass and ACT are in action as well at Thunder Road, and Riverhead has opening night out there on Long Island. So plenty to watch, Kyle, this weekend as you guys get your notes buttoned up for Sizzler coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, notes are buttoned up. We have Wild Thing Kart opening practice this Sunday, as that season is just around the corner. So it'll be a quick turnaround next week after the Sizzler, because we run those on Monday nights on Flow Racing from Stafford Speedway. New London Waterford Speed Bowl here in Connecticut on the Shoreline. They open up Saturday night with the modified program and the SK lights and the late models and on down the line. So things are getting busy up here in this region of the country. If Mother Nature would just cooperate, of course, being we record this midweek. The sun is shining and it's like 70 degrees outside right now. It
always works out that way. You go,
exactly.
Why can't we race now? Yeah, exactly. Every time we get to the weekend, there's, here comes the rain or whatever. Actually, in fact, they were doing a test out at, I think it was Road America for IMSA, and it was snowing in Wisconsin.
Of course it was.
May 1st. So I don't know what's going on, Kyle. We'll figure it out. Before we go, don't forget MRN has live coverage of all things out at Kansas this weekend. We've got a team out there headed that direction. The Archidon 150 at Kansas, you heard Toni Breidinger talk about. That'll be Saturday, 2 p.m. on the Motor Racing Network. And then immediately following the Heart of America 200, 7:30 p.m. that night on Saturday for the trucks. And that's also on MRN. And then don't forget, it all leads up to Sunday, NASCAR Live Race Day, 2 p.m. Eastern, leading into the NASCAR Cup Series at Kansas. Again, all heard right here on the Motor Racing Network. Well, Kyle, appreciate it, my friend. Enjoy your weekend of racing wherever you may go. Are you going to hit up anything locally? Or are you going to go out to Waterford?
Oh yeah, we'll be at Waterford Saturday night, Stafford all day Sunday for practice. And then it's kind of the calm before the storm again, and hopefully not the real storm, the storm on the racetrack next Friday and Saturday here at Stafford.
Sounds like a plan. For Kyle Rickey, my name is Chris Wilner, producer Pat Jaggers. Thank you so much for tuning in to NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Whelen Engineering. On the road, in the air, and around the world, Whelen is trusted to be seen, trusted to be heard, and trusted to perform. We'll see you next time on Coast to Coast.